Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugit.
Welcome back, everyone, and happy Counselor Appreciation Month. Yes, that really is a thing, and Gilbert and I are blessed to work alongside some of the best counselor educators in the country. Our CACREP accredited master's and doctoral programs are helping prepare the next wave of counselors to do great work in their respective communities.
They sure are, Ashlie, and in honor of them and their service to the field, we are sitting down with Townsend Institute core faculty member, Dr. Brenda Keck. Brenda's experience spans the globe to include her upbringing in East Africa to current pastime fishing the waters of Alaska. Brenda's areas of expertise include preventing burnout and compassion fatigue, trauma recovery, and building resilience and wellness, which we'll dive into in this episode.
And if you're considering a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling or marriage, couples, and family counseling, or a PhD in counselor education and supervision, then check out cui.edu/Townsend and register for our next Townsend Live Info Night on April 29th to learn more about our programs. Now, let's get started with Brenda. Welcome back, everyone, to the Townsend Institute podcast series. Gilbert and I are here today with our friend and colleague, Dr. Brenda Keck. Good afternoon, Brenda.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
Glad you're here, Brenda.
We are excited. You have been our list of guests that we have been wanting to have on our podcast for a long time now. And this just seemed like the perfect time to bring you in and talk about all that you are currently doing, have done in the past with the Townsend Institute. We're just going to kind of jump right into it. So our first question we have for you today, Brenda, is just tell our listeners, for those that haven't had you as a professor in class or don't get the privilege of working with you, a little bit more about your background and perhaps when you knew you felt a calling to go into mental health counseling.
Boy, when I think back, the first time I felt a call or a pull toward the counseling field, ironically, I had read a book in high school that was chronicling the relationship between a counselor and a young child that had been abused. And at the time, I actually grew up in East Africa. So I had not been exposed to a whole lot of vocational options. And I did not know what a counselor was. I'd never heard of it before.
Oh, wow.
And so I just remember reading that book, and it stirred my heart so deeply. And I just remember thinking, I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do.
Oh,
And
my
it was
goodness.
a long time. It was a long journey from that moment of that just feeling like, man, what an amazing thing to get to have that kind of impact on someone's life, to coming back to the States to college, eventually figuring out what counseling was, realizing I would have to get a master's degree to do that. But then preferring to move back overseas with my husband instead of go to school for 2 more years.
Mm-hmm.
And then started a family. And then I had my own mental health crisis in my mid-30s. And that's when I really learned what the mental health profession was about. I sat on the other side of the chair for a long time and learned how vital those services were and benefited so deeply in my own life from them. And so my twin daughters were 15 years old by the time that door finally opened for me to go back to school and chase that dream that started when I was in high school and just never died.
Wow. I love that. And I hope our listeners are hearing that as well, right? You're not someone who came out of undergrad at, 21, 22, 23 years old, going right into it, right? That opportunity for you wasn't until a little bit later, like you said, mid-30s, having, almost raised 2 young daughters and stuff.
Yeah.
So it really, those vocational callings can come at all different times of life.
They can. And Ashley, I look back on that now and I really see God's hand in that. I actually started back to school right after my husband and I moved back from being overseas. And some things happened in our family that I had to stop. And I look back now and it was the grace of God on every client I ever would have seen. Had I gone on and gotten my degree at that point, because I had a lot of my own work to do, and I didn't even realize that I needed to do that work. But I would have not been a very good mental health professional at that stage in my life because I did not have the life experience and I hadn't worked through a lot of my own
Mhm.
issues that needed to
Yeah.
be addressed.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and to be honest, I know 15-year-olds can cause mental health crisis within the
No
parents. So,
doubt.
not that mine is doing that right now, but that's okay. And so no, now, Brenda, you are here at the Townsend Institute. What got you excited? What called you to come and start working here at the Townsend Institute at Concordia?
Well, a lot of my practice with mental health professionals had been in the humanitarian and missionary community.
Hmm.
And so these are people who their work life is deeply intertwined with their faith and their religious commitments. And we know from the research that religious coping in times of stress can be super beneficial,
Yeah.
or it can be really detrimental if that individual is misinterpreting or misunderstanding how to apply scripture. And I had witnessed a lot of times in my practice how trauma experiences could really impede spiritual functioning. And so, one of the things that drew me to the Townsend Institute in particular was the opportunity to train the next generation of counselors to be able to recognize and promote not only healthy emotional life, but also to understand how that is interacting and interweaving with their spiritual life from a Christian perspective.
Wow.
What and I think about that probably missionaries, I mean,
Yeah.
their faith, and then also that's their job as they're out there, and then their friends, but probably their friends also they're hoping to come to church, and then if they start having some mental health issues, then they feel guilty because they're trying to get people to know about Jesus and
Mhm.
all. I mean, I can only imagine how this all
Yeah,
intertwines out there on the
exactly.
mission field and things.
Yep, you
So
got it. You're
yeah.
hitting the nail on the head there.
Wow. And I'm sure a lot of that stemmed then from the work that you did overseas, right? You have a unique
Mhm.
perspective that a lot of people don't because you're able to see all the cultural aspects
I did.
associated.
I knew the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's
For
for
better
sure.
or for worse, it was the world I knew.
Brenda, while all of us at the Townsend Institute, all of our faculty and staff are well versed in the Townsend model. However, you are probably at the top of the list in terms of understanding it, working with it. You've written some of our highest level course curriculum surrounding the model. Tell us a little bit, what's your favorite part about teaching and maybe even role playing aspects of, character structure with our students?
Mm. One of the things I love about the Townsend model is how versatile it is. It not only provides a template for healthy development, it also explains what has gone wrong when someone is suffering emotionally or they have a string of broken relationships or they're just not functioning well in life. And then it provides a roadmap to help us know how to address those things. And so one of the things that I love about the Townsend Institute is that model, but also the commitment to personal development of our students. So as they go through the program from the very first weeks, they learn the basics of the model and they develop a personal growth plan. And they immediately are started down the path of assessing themselves regularly and revising that plan. And there's just a real growth-oriented culture throughout the program. So they don't just learn about the model, they internalize it. And then
Mhm.
we get to support them in using the model as a template for their own growth as they're going through the program. So by the time they get to the Townsend model class, um, I feel like I get the privilege then of taking what they've internalized and they know from experience and translating that then into a model and how to use that to help clients down the road. So I don't know if I answered your question. I'm trying to be a politician. You asked a question and I just said what I wanted.
No, but what you said was wonderful. What you said was
Okay.
wonderful. And I think that's a great thing too. And also, for our listeners out there, obviously Brenda's coming in from more of the counseling side of the house,
Uh-huh.
but this model and internalizing it, personalizing it is actually
Yes.
something all of our students do, whether you're on the executive coaching or leadership
Mhm.
side, because we are concerned with not just your professional and your academic success, but that personal success as well. And that is really attributed to how many family members, right? We get this every graduation, right? We get spouses coming up to
Mhm.
us
Yeah.
telling us, my husband or my wife is a better person, a better parent. And perhaps it's because some of that personal transformation they've experienced as well. So that's
Yeah.
really great.
And that versatility of the model makes it so valuable for all the programs. It's not just for counseling.
Yeah.
It has wide applicability.
Absolutely. And it's hard to really relay that in an info night. Like, oh, this is really going to impact
Yeah.
you. And so until they come and experience it, that's very true, that the transformation that happens. So you've done a lot of research, and you've jumped into the mental health, and you've done so much work here at the Townsend Institute. But I know one thing you've been doing a little bit lately is looking at positive psychology, right? Specifically with faith-based and nonprofit leaders out there. What brought you into this world?
Yeah. That's not maybe a typical area of specialization for someone in the counseling field. So when I started out working as a mental health professional, as we said, I was working in the expatriate community. And that is a population that is at very high risk for experiencing traumatic events. The baseline of stress in expatriate living is extraordinarily high. One study actually found that the level of stress that is normal in that community is predictive of a hospitalization within 2 years. So now they're
Really?
not all in the hospital. They are actually a very resilient group of people, but they're at very high risk. And so add on top of that, that many people drawn into this kind of work, like all helping professions, have a high rate of historical trauma. So my areas of expertise in working with that group quickly became burnout, compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, trauma recovery. That's not sounding
Mm.
like positive psychology, is it?
Well, I mean, I know it gets there. I know it
It
gets to
gets
that.
there.
It gets there.
It gets there. So there were two things that began to shift my perspective. One was that when a family living overseas has some kind of a mental health crisis, the implications for the whole family are catastrophic because there's often no care for them there. And so sometimes what that means is the whole family gets uprooted, kids get pulled out of school, they leave their support system, and they have to travel somewhere where they can get the help they need. And so that became a concern to me to see that how catastrophic it became when someone got to that point. And then I began to also see themes of religious and spiritual interpretations that not only resulted in the burnout, but would be an obstruction to the recovery, or unresolved trauma that would set up contradictions in what they would say was their beliefs. And yet there was another part of them that was experiencing something that was incoherent or contradictory to that. So what I found is I would be sitting with people sometimes, and what would be going through my head was, this could have been prevented. This did
Mm.
not have to have happened. And I began to just have this growing desire to not only, in my mind, I pictured myself like standing by a river, just pulling people out one at a time, saving them from drowning. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking one day, can I just do some swimming lessons? Like, is there something we can do
Wow.
to prevent people from getting to this point? And so that's where my interest in positive psychology and resilience research came in.
Swimming lessons. I like
Swimming
that.
lessons.
Positive psychology.
So that's the distinctive about positive psychology. Instead of studying mental illness, like what's causing something to go wrong, they study health and wellness. And it asks the question, what makes some people flourish in difficult times and other people not? And so a lot of the research comes out of the military community, where they would observe that a group of military personnel would go into a situation and they would all experience basically the same thing. Some of them would end up having severe PTSD, and others would struggle for about 3 months and then it would resolve and they would be fine. And so they began to study the ones that were fine. In the past, we'd only studied the ones that were not fine.
Weren't. Yeah.
And so we began to learn what are the characteristics and what are the preconditions that give people that resilience to do well when they are facing difficult times.
Okay, so walk us through a little bit then. What does the swimming lesson entail, right? What are maybe just a couple tips or tricks that even some of our listeners could potentially employ to help them, like you say, not go down that path or not lead to drowning?
I think there's two areas of research that have really informed a lot of what I do. And one of them does come directly out of positive psychology. And there's a framework that they have kind of consolidated a lot of the research about what causes people to flourish. And they put it together in a very neat little acronym that makes it easy to remember. And you can also find a lot of information about this online. And the acronym is PERMA, called PERMA. And so each one of those letters identifies a certain area of life that if we cultivate and develop, actually will cause us to flourish. And so I can go through those real quickly. The first one is positive emotions. So increasing our experience of positive emotions, cultivating feelings like gratitude, joy, noticing the good. Our brains are generally wired to look for danger and what's going to go wrong. And we have to be really intentional about cultivating a different kind of mindset. Engagement, using our strengths to engage in work and play, that whole idea of engaging in flow activities. And then just a whole, another website I'll tell people about, it's called Via Strengths, and that's values in action. And there's a lot of research that talks about when we know our strengths and we use our strengths, that it increases our energy, it drives confidence, it really contributes to well-being. We know from the Townsend Institute and the Townsend model also that relationships are huge, and that's the R in PERMA. There's a longitudinal study out of Harvard on wellness and how people thrive into old age. And one of the highest predictors of doing well into old age is the quality of relationships in your middle age.
Is that the 90-year study? Is that
It
really
is.
long?
It's the longest longitudinal study that's ever been run.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And actually, if you just go to the Harvard website, they have a lot of information on there. Also, TED Talks and things that just nuggets of information they've learned about wellness. And then meaning is the M in PERMA. And that's the kind of the Viktor Frankl idea of finding purpose and meaning in what we do. Accomplishments, being able to set goals and achieve them. And then finally, the last one is H, health. And that just is the idea of having routines that just keep us refueled and healthy, eating, moving, resting, those kinds of things. So I draw from that quite a bit. And then also I draw just from the spiritual concepts of the value and the dynamism between faith, hope, and love. And actually, there's a lot of overlap in the practical application and cultivation of those things with resilience.
Wow. I love that. I'm taking notes. Gilbert and I are both taking notes as we go through.
I
We're
am.
thinking, which of these letters are we going to start with first, right? Because I think what's so interesting, this is so helpful for everyone, no matter where you are, what your vocational calling is, whether you consider yourself a healthy individual right now or not. I mean, these are all things that are just continuous work.
They
Right?
are. One of the things that we've learned about resilience is that some of the components of resilience are natural personality traits. But what we've learned is that even if you were not born with those natural personality traits, that these are skills that can be practiced and learned. And the good news is our brain doesn't care if we learned it and built a skill or if we were born with it. So to your point, Ashlie, these are things that are just beneficial for anyone.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And do you find sometimes, Brenda, that maybe they were resilient in one situation and then something else happens and they get stuck? some of these individuals?
Sometimes, yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think that can be hard for some folks. They're like, I don't know why I've never really had this
Hmm.
before, and to get out of that
Right.
place.
Right. Either they often that will happen during transition in life, like
Hmm.
transitioning from one life stage to another, or other kinds of transitions where they're faced with something that there's an element that they haven't before. And a lot of times that's when historical trauma will come into play because it will connect back with something that it hasn't necessarily been a problem for them, but there's something about the current situation now that's connecting there, and their brain has got to work some things out and they're stuck.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Well, these are amazing resources and tips that you're giving us, and these ideas going back to this idea of resilience and wellness. We can agree that this is important for all people, but specifically, I want to highlight this group that you are focusing on, right? Our faith-based and nonprofit leaders, perhaps those that have worked or
Mhm.
served overseas. Why particularly did you focus maybe on that demographic? Is there something
Yeah,
maybe unique about that?
that's a great question. I think the nonprofit leaders that I work with stateside here in the US, and then the humanitarian workers and missionaries and expatriates that I've worked with overseas share some common characteristics that I think make them a target. The need for them is really big.
Yeah.
And so let's just talk about faith-based nonprofit leaders because that's where we are right
Yeah.
now here.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Right.
Um, so some of the things that make them at high risk is their jobs, a lot of times their calling in life, a sense of calling, um, real community needs, the compassion they feel kind of collide with a life of chronic stress and
Mm,
needs that are so overwhelming that they never get totally met. And
mm,
so this is not just a job for them. And so their work and their identity and their spirituality are all tied up together in it. And so in the face of this overwhelming human need, holding boundaries for health and longevity can feel like selfishness or
mhm,
unfaithfulness.
mm,
And even if they have a healthy and sustaining spirituality, they're just chronically exposed to human suffering and need. And they're often working in environments where there's a scarcity of resources.
mm.
They're understaffed,
Right.
but the community expectations are high. So no matter how hard they work, the work is never done. Like they can never resolve the needs that there are in the community. So it's kind of a setup for burnout and compassion fatigue. And so what's
Interesting.
at stake? I mean, I think this is where my passion for it comes. They will not be able to sustain the work that started out being so life-giving to them and that maybe God really called them to, but they can't sustain it. And
Mm,
so they lose, the organization loses, the community loses, and then most importantly, the kingdom of God
Mm.
loses
Yeah.
because they can't sustain.
We have a lot of listeners that are students, they're new
Mhm.
professionals. What would you say, okay, this is important for you to do as you begin to integrate this work on resilience into their studies and work? Tips would you give them for that?
I would probably point them back to the websites I mentioned earlier to start
Okay.
because there's a lot of resources there. So I would say um, realizing that our brains are not necessarily wired in our best interest in when it comes to flourishing sometimes, that we have more of a survival response to life. And so to realize that there are things we can do about that. And so I think they'll find resources on these websites that will give them some ways to move forward. Um, I think if I were to say two things, if I were to say these are the two things that I think everyone can benefit from, one of them is that you are cultivating strong relationships that are
Mm.
mutual.
mm,
And we just know that being in safe relationships benefits us in so many ways. And I think the other one would be um, there is so much research behind the value of something as simple as a gratitude journal and training our brains. I think the picture that comes to my mind is like when you stub your toe, all you're thinking about in that moment is my toe hurts. And we hyper focus on the pain. And we don't in that moment think, but my arms feel just fine. Like we don't think of that in the time.
I will say that is absolutely true. I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
Everyone but Gilbert.
Yeah, I have never thought about that.
And so, but if we take the initiative and we build in habits that help us practice opening our vision back up so that all that we're thinking about is not the pain points, but that we're reminding our brain and we're taking in the goodness at the same time, not to deny that our toe hurts, but to acknowledge my toe hurts also, nothing else is hurting, and I'm so grateful for that. That those kinds of habits actually have huge benefits for us long term.
Yeah, I think you need to test that too, Brenda. Next time you're around, just stomp on Ashley's foot and let's see.
Right.
Let's see
how
if
I
she,
do.
A field test.
Yeah, let's
research.
see if she
We like
sings
to do research.
We do.
That's a research right there. Yeah.
Research
Right.
study. I don't think that'd pass IRB. Not quite. Well, this is wonderful, Brenda. That was great. I want to switch back. We've been talking a lot about your research interests and that as of late. But again, one of the biggest hats you also wear is one of our core faculty members in our counseling program. And so you get should I say privilege, right? The benefit, but also the challenge at times, I know, of being on the front lines with our counseling students, those who are working and training to become the next wave of mental health counselors. What gives you hope? Now you're in the classroom with these students. What gives you hope about the future of mental health counseling and the work that these students are going to do in the future?
Well, I think that you said it in a way. The students are what give me hope. When I get to watch them develop over time, every time I go to graduation and I look in the eyes of those students and remember where they were when they first got here, and then you look at who they are when they're leaving, it gives me a great deal of hope. I also have the privilege of teaching our field classes. And so I'm with the students every week, watching them develop their clinical skills and come into that counselor identity. And the hope for me is I see who we're sending back out into the world. And it gives me a lot of hope for our field and for the people that they will reach with. Our students are the bomb. They are amazing, and they're so inspirational to me. And they are the things that keep me going in this job. And they definitely for me are the hope for our field.
Now we got to move into story time here a little bit, Brenda, because you talked about students and all your work. But what, as one of our earliest counseling core faculty members, what has been a favorite story or highlight of your time here as a Golden Eagle?
As a Golden Eagle, I am one of the oldest. I have been here 8 years. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah, and in again, I've said it before, in dog years, it's like
I know
58 years.
And I'm telling you what, some of them did feel like dog years.
Yeah. That's right. Love it.
Do you know the thing that has been so fun for me is that our program was really just getting its sea legs when I got here, and it has been the biggest joy. I love to build things, but not by myself so much. So for me, when I just step back and look at my time at the Townsend Institute, for sure, the thing that rises to the top is the opportunity I've had to be a part of building a new program and watching it mature, and the team. The team here is amazing. And I may be embarrassingly motivated by teamwork. And so that's a big deal to me. But truly, when we interview new faculty, I have an invisible factor on my score sheet that's like, how fun will they be?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I love that about the Townsend Institute and the team that we're on. We work hard and we've done a lot of work, but we play hard. And we have a high value of having a lot of fun together. So there are so many stories, many which probably should not be told here.
Well, it's been so much fun. Brenda, like you said, you've been here really from the get-go of the Townsend Institute, one of our longest standing faculty that we've had in our counseling program. And so who better to have on to talk about, just the growth of our program, but also the amazing work that you continue to do as well. As you know, as a listener of tips, we end all of our episodes with a takeaway tip. So what tip are you leaving our listeners with today?
The tip is that you can influence your resilience. You can do it.
That's great.
You can do something about it. Your resilience isn't just something that you either have or you don't. You can cultivate it.
Great.
There you go, listeners. All right, we're going to end on that note, and everyone take off and go influence your resilience. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you so much. Thank you
for
being here.
inviting me here. It's a great privilege.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.